Hey everybody, it's Spicy Kai. Today I want to talk to you about Mississippi Martyrs White Men Made in 1955. Please be sure to like this video and go ahead and subscribe and hit all notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. Now let's get to the content. Recently, America heard about the tragic story of Rasheem Carter. The 25-year-old, who was from Fayette, Mississippi, was in Taylorsville, Mississippi, about 2 hours away for a job. But on October 1st, 2023, the young black man reached out to his mother, telling her that his life was in danger. It seems he was being harassed and potentially stalked by some white men, which caused him to reach out to the Taylorsville Police Department for help. But they declined and sent him away. The next day, on October 2nd, his mother reported him missing. Later that day, she was shown surveillance footage of her son, who appeared to be frightened, battered, bruised, and running for his life. Exactly 1 month later, on November 2nd, his remains were found just 100 yards from where the footage was captured in a wooded area. His head was no longer attached to the rest of his body. Thanks to civil rights attorney Ben Crump, things are heating up for the police department, which insists there is no foul play involved. Hopefully, the FBI will get involved and find out what really happened to Rasheem Carter and who's responsible for it. In the meantime, I decided to take a deep dive into other mysterious and infamous takedowns of black folk in Mississippi since the civil rights movement in 1950s. Each incident shows the deeply embedded history of narcissistic racial terror inflicted on black Americans in the poorest state in the entire country throughout modern history. Who knows how many people lost their lives during and because of the civil rights movement? But what we do know for sure is that many men, women, and children of various backgrounds, religions, and races made boss moves and sometimes foolish moves that placed them on the list of civil rights martyrs in America. Here are 5 martyrs that made the news in 1955 for losing their lives at the hands of those who did whatever it took to make black lives miserable. In 1954, black folks in Belzoni outnumber white people by 2 to 1. So Reverend George Lee thought this was the perfect time to get his people to pay their poll taxes so they can register to vote. He and his friend Gus Courts launched a local chapter of the NAACP, which held meetings and passed out printed materials urging black citizens to do just that. That's when a White Citizens Council was quickly organized in retaliation. All blacks registered to vote were placed on a list which was distributed to white business owners. These white citizens fought back against anyone on the list by firing them from their jobs, increasing their rents, and denying them credit. Reverend Lee was offered protection only if he ended his efforts to get black folks to vote. He declined. On May 7, 1955, Lee's life was taken for good as he drove home in his car. Someone in a car passing by him aimed a pistol at him and fired, blowing his face to pieces. Even still, he dragged himself out of the car and over to a cab stand. 2 black drivers found him there and rushed him to the hospital, but he didn't survive. Officials ruled his demise an accident caused by a traffic collision. And the lead pellets found in his body? Will they contribute those to dental fillings that probably came loose and relodged themselves into his face and neck? The FBI released files related to the case in 2000. White Citizens Council members Joe David Watson Sr. and Peck Ray were named as suspects. However, they both passed away themselves back in the 70s. Lamar Smith was a 63-year-old World War I veteran, local farmer, and voting rights advocate for the black people of Brookhaven. As an affiliate of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership, Local whites had warned and threatened him about registering black voters and organizing their voter efforts. On August 13th, 1955, Mr. Smith stood on the courthouse lawn urging local African Americans to vote in a runoff election in front of dozens of witnesses, including then Sheriff Robert E. Case. Shots rang out in broad daylight. When the smoke cleared, Smith was gone for good. Right there at the crime scene stood one of the assailants, covered in blood. Even though the sheriff saw this, he allowed the white suspect to leave the scene free and clear. Days later, the white man, along with two other white suspects, were all arrested for Smith's demise. The following month, the grand jury, which was made up of 20 white men, declined to indict any of the men. District Attorney E.C. Barlow claimed the, quote, lack of witness cooperation, unquote, was the reason the men were never taken to trial. Much like many black city boys back in the day, Chicago-bred 14-year-old Emmett Till was visiting the South for the summer. He was staying with his uncle and aunt, Moses and Elizabeth Wright, in a town named Money. One day, Emmett was accused of flirting with a white woman, Carolyn Bryant, in her local store. Her husband was out of town at the time. 4 days later, on August 28th, 1955, at about 2:30 in the morning, the woman's husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Millam, went to the Wright home with a pistol and demanded the boy's uncle hand him over.
I want to talk to you about that boy.
They've come for you. Hello?
After taking the boy by force, they made him strip and carry a cotton gin fan, which weighed 75 pounds, to the Tallahatchie riverbank. Both men gave the young black boy a severe beating, dug his eye out, fired a bullet into his head, and tossed him into the river with the cotton gin fan tied to him with barbed wire. 3 days later, he was found in the Tallahatchie River. His body was so disfigured that his uncle Moses had to identify him by an initial ring he was wearing. Less than 2 weeks after his open casket funeral, the two white men went on trial in a Sumner, Mississippi segregated courthouse. Even after a few witnesses positively identified the men as the ones who took Emmett's last breath, the all-white jury found them not guilty. What was the reasoning? They claimed the prosecution had failed to prove the identity of the boy's body. Protected by double jeopardy, both men confessed to everything in a Look magazine article, which was published on January 24th, 1956. In 2017, it was revealed that Carolyn had recanted her testimony from 1955. She admitted it had all been a lie, stating, quote, nothing that boy did could justify what happened to him, unquote. Clinton Melton lived in Glendora, Mississippi, just 20 miles from Money, where Emmett met his tragic ending. He worked at a local gas station where he fixed flats and pumped gas. One summer afternoon on December 3rd, 1955, Elmer Otis Kimball pulled into the gas station where Mr. Melton worked. The white man was a close friend of J.W. Milan, one of the men who abducted Emmett Till. Kimball accused Clinton Melton of pumping more petrol into his car than he had requested. This fueled the white man's rage. Before driving away, he shouted to Melton, quote, don't be here when I get back, unquote. The owner of the gas station, Melton's white boss, told him to go home. But Kimball returned with a shotgun before he could hightail it out of there. He shot the husband and father of three in the hand and the head, taking him down for good.
Kimball parked the car near the gasoline pump. Clinton approached him, and they told him to put the gasoline in.
So my dad filled the car up with gas, and then when he had finished, he told me that, okay, you're finished. And he said, no, I didn't tell you to fill it up. I want $2 worth. And my dad told me, he said, I distinctly heard you say you wanted a fill-up.
That's when the dispute came. They said he didn't put the right amount in there. So he told him again, said, well, I put in there what you told me.
And he told my father, well, don't be here when I get back. And so when he told him that, the service station owner told my father, Clinton, just go home, you know.
Clinton started putting some fuel in his car so he could go home. And before he finished, they returned.
When he came back with the gun, he shot in the car. From what I was told, he had a bullet hole in his hand and a bullet through the head.
When the police arrived to investigate, he told the cops that Melton had fired 3 shots at him before he left to retrieve his own medal. However, no weapon was ever found on Melton. Even his white employer and another white witness both testified that the man was never armed. This case saw the same sheriff in charge of the investigation as the Emmett Till case. The trial was held at the same segregated courthouse, and Kimball had the same defense attorneys as Till's accused killers. And just like with the Till trial, the all-white jury found Kimball not guilty of taking down Clinton Melton. Also known by J.E. Evansington, James Edward Evansington was a Tutwiler, Mississippi elementary school teacher. In 1955, on Christmas Eve, his remains were found by a farmer near the end of a Long Lake, Mississippi bridge just miles from Drew, Mississippi, in shallow water. The farmer also spotted Mr. Evansington's car close by, as well as a note he allegedly wrote before taking out his own last breath. A 2010 Department of Justice memo reveals that it was addressed to his, quote, friends on behalf of his wife, telling them, Dear blank, I hate to do this, but I can't stand my sickness and worries any longer. Take care of blank and pray for my soul. Friends, please notify my wife, M.L. Evanston, a school teacher who lives in Tutwiler, Mississippi. Help her and my blank all you can. This is her car. Tell blank to see that my wife gets this car. She lives in Tutwiler, Mississippi. I thank you. J.E. Evanston. There were a few major problems with this case, especially when it comes to this note. Number 1, the name was spelled wrong. Even though his wife, Margarita Evansington, confirmed that the handwriting was his, it was impossible to not notice that his last name was spelled incorrectly. This alone seemed very bizarre. Instead of Evansington, he signed an Evanston, which many believe was his way of telling his wife he wrote the note under duress. Number 2, shallow water. He supposedly went there to drown himself in the lake. However, he was found in shallow water. So people wanted to know, how did he drown? Not to mention, the coroner never officially listed that as his COD. Number 3, friends versus wife. Who addresses an off myself note to their friends to have them deliver the news to their wife? Why wouldn't he address the notes directly to her and have her pass a message to his friends if they're really that important? It's just so impersonal. And he refers to her as M.L. Evanston as opposed to Margarita Evansington, her real name. Number 4, the grammar in the letter was extremely off for a school teacher. There were run-on sentences and missing commas. And how many times did he need to reiterate that she lived in Tutwiler? Number 5, Black folk myths. A man who had sat on the case's coroner's jury said they found no evidence of foul play based on the evidence presented to them. However, the jury members did find the case unusual because, quote, Black people didn't commit suicide back then, unquote. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in tomorrow for Mississippi Martyrs White Men Made in 1956, 57, and 58. And please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Spicy out.